and wait for a while, right?
Yeah, just wait a little.
Greetings, Alex the Inevitable, as we say in the flyer for the program, back for various romantic delectations here tonight. One of my favorite places in the known universe to perform for you all. It's just a super delight to be here. You know, whatever time that my hosts Jackie and Bill are willing to have me here. Try to do a different program every time. Same thing tonight. If the program proves to be too short, I will add something that you might have heard me play a year ago. Tonight, the topicality is piano selections. They can be from shows. They can be selections of music by a particular songwriter. I try to pick some of their best songs, a healthy dollop of some of their obscure numbers. Very romantic stuff, but sort of the late romantic period in classical music with a beat. And that beat is the left hand that does. You know, this is a striding left hand, but not a jazz striding left hand. This is very arranged music. It's jazzy rather than jazz. I use a certain amount of my classical training, total immersion therapy, and all sorts of things, 1920s, 30s, to doll up the various songs of the period. And I really like showing you tunes that should have made it, but for whatever reason, it wasn't meant to be. So tonight, I don't want to jabber too much. I'll give you a little bit of historical focus between numbers. Other than that, I'm hoping that you'll have some good audio enjoyment. Now, tonight we're concentrating on fairly elongated medleys from either shows or songwriters. I want to start with a show by one of the great piano novelty guys of all time, Britisher Billy Mayerl. Mayerl was writing a series of absolutely wonderful sprightly pieces in the 1920s and 30s that were called novelty piano solos. And they were basically solos written by a guy with a lot of advanced classical training and wonderful technique, and above all, a wonderful melodic gift. His pieces sounded like this. Or like this. Or his theme song was called Marigold. Played that in a couple of years. I just thought that I would play it for you, showing you how weird the brain is. It was still there. But Mayerl, when he was not writing these sprightly piano pieces, which now, of course, everybody's going to ask me, when are you going to do a whole program with Billy Mayerl piano pieces? I'll do it. But my wife and I are still sort of in the process of settling down 90 minutes south of here. We're in McLean, Virginia right now, and we have moved to Richmond. And we have a nice faux Tudor 1932 home. It's taking some time to really get everything in place, but it's going to be quite the wonder. And the entire grapevine will have a standing invitation. We're hoping to have concerts down there as well. But right now, and don't worry, Jackie and Bill back there, you'll still be running the best salon series in the known galaxy. Absolutely. But Mayerl, when he was not writing these pieces, was writing with his melodic gift that never ended, a series of shows that played London various times. They were really rather successful, but nothing really made the London, you might say, hit parade or made it over the ocean, over the pond. So I want to show you what a typical Billy Mayerl London stage show sounded like. This one is called Crazy Days. Played for a while in the late 1930s. It got good reviews. It didn't play longer because the lead male character, a guy named Laddie Cliff, who was a really fave guy in the British stage, he died of something or another shortly into the run, and they just couldn't keep it going without him. So, a medley of Crazy Days. It's a mixture of sprightly numbers, some super romantic numbers like the oddly titled Stranger in a Cup of Tea, and then there was a gorgeous number called Love Was Born. Anyway, let's see how a couple of Pinot Noirs allow me to play this with as many right notes as possible. Anyway, this is, anyway, Billy Mayerl, he is mostly known for these really wonderful pieces, but I've always tried to explore what was he doing in the popular song repertoire, and this is the kind of quality writing he was doing. So, you know, there may be oddball sorts of titles like Stranger and a Cup of Tea, but my gosh, did that man have a runaway melodic gift. So, Crazy Days was the name of that show. All right, we are staying in England, an American named Harry Archer. His original name was Harry Oracher, A-U-R-A-C-H-E-R. I'm pretty sure his first major hit was the show Irene, and somebody is probably going to immediately write in and say, no, you got him mixed up with somebody else. I think that's really the big show. But in the mid-20s, he wrote a show called Sweet Jesse James, and then in 1934, the plot line of Sweet Jesse James is reused in a show where he's visiting England, and the show is entitled Lucky Break. I'm sitting down again. Lucky Break is a show that I discovered via a 78 RPM British record. The band leader was a fellow named DeBroy Summers. He had a sort of expanded dance band called sort of a concert orchestra, and he would do medleys from shows of that period in this case 1934 in England. He had a pianist in his band named Arthur Sandford. Sandford was a really highly trained, talented classical pianist who dabbled in the same kind of syncopation that you're hearing me do, and he knew how to do it. In fact, he came up with such an incredible arrangement of one of the songs from this particular show you're about to hear, which is called Lucky Break, that Summers, the conductor, gave him a good 2 minutes where the orchestra completely ducks out, and on an otherwise orchestral recording, you have a piano solo. No bass, no drums, entirely piano solo. It is one of the most gripping, wonderful solos ever put on record, and it's in the middle of something that shouldn't even have been a piano solo. I try to do a little bit of mimicking of what I heard in both that solo and in what the band does. There's a published piano selection. If I had my act together, I would show you what some of these original pieces of sheet music look like, but in this case, you know, the actual published selection doesn't bear terribly much resemblance to what you're about to hear, which is very highly embellished from what is in the original recording. Not the original, I say, publication. Recording is incredibly embellished. All right, Lucky Break, 1934, Harry Archer. the recording that I really based a lot of my arranging, the Broy Summers and his Concert Orchestra, a British Columbia 12-inch 78. I suspect you'll probably find it on YouTube somewhere. It is one of the most thrilling Broadway type stage music recordings, medleys that you'll ever encounter. And when I found it years ago, I played it for various of the local friends who were into the same sort of stuff, and as we say over the pond, they were gobsmacked. So anyway, that Harry Archer's Lucky Break, and you know, you'll never hear these sorts of things, except when you have a nerdish sheet music collector who likes demonstrating these sorts of things. And it was informed that it would be to my vast benefit if I just tell you very quickly that the gracious hosts are willing to match any alms for the poor pianist. You know, poor because he just purchased in Richmond, and well, it'll take a while to get the bank account up again. No, they most graciously will match any kinds of virtual tips that you may want to offer to, let's see, how many fingers are left? All right, I think I'll make it through the concert. Okay. Once again, sticking in Britain. I haven't done very much of the music across the pond over the last year or so of the pandemic performances here. And there's just a ton of really lovely, wonderful rhythmic stuff that was being written over there. And in this case, the composer is a fellow named Harry Parr Davies, with a few numbers by guys named Phil Park and Kenneth Leslie Smith. Some of the really romantic guys of the English Broadway, English songwriters. Harry Parr Davies apparently entered the dressing room of Gracie Fields in England and by and large talked his way into becoming her accompanist and writing songs for her. This guy had a melodic gift up the yin-yang as well. You'll hear in this musical that he primarily wrote called Top of the World, which supposedly was a review, a rollicking review, but when you hear these songs, that and the adjective rollicking, I'm not sure really quite fit. This guy knew how to write a romantic melody. He decides shortly after this not to have an ulcer treated, and it kills him at the ripe old age of 41. Harry Parr Davies. Real shame. It was a loss, and sort of one of those brief candles of music. Back in the 1960s, in High Fidelity magazine, there was an article by one of the reviewers of classical piano music, primarily in High Fidelity, a guy named Harris Goldsmith, whose article was called Brief Candles, and it was entirely about short-lived, mostly performers, but I suspect a few composers as well. And of course, he wasn't talking about popular music. Popular music had its own slew of these kinds of people as well. So, and that's my lecture on that. Let us continue. Top of the World. Now, there's always, when I'm reading elongated medleys, there's always a possibility that there'll be a catastrophe. That I pick up both pages at once, I throw it behind me, and there's nothing in front of me. So, just be prepared. I may have to just noodle with one hand while I pick up the other part of the music after this. But if I get it situated correctly, we can hope that it'll work. those piano selections something else. There are a few other friends around the country, fellow collectors, who are into this stuff as well. They are wonderful templates to try to orchestrate for more interesting piano performances. I've got the supreme kick out of them. They did a good number of them in this country, but in England, practically every show that played the London stage had a published medley selection. Same cover as all the other pieces, just that it was 10 or 11 pages long. All right, to continue, I would like, we're coming home. In fact, no, we're not going to do a medley now. It's time for one of the songwriter medleys. It depends on how much time I have at the end of this. As you see, most of my medleys are the length of a Gustav Mahler symphony. So, one of my fave songwriters for many years has been Johnny Green. And the Johnny Green that I particularly appreciate are his early songs, 1930 through 35 or so. This is the fellow who brought us Body and Soul, from Out of Nowhere, Coquette, and that's exactly what you're going to get. There may be some of you actually recognize something that Alex is playing. Wow! Don't get used to this. So, Grand Fantasy on Johnny Green. No music. God help me. through this country now. I'm going to end the show with this, because there may be 5 fingers left after the end of this particular medley. James P. Johnson, 1920, no, that I have to look up, 1924, wrote a show called Runnin' Wild. I think it's mostly his numbers. There might have been a few interpolations by other of the black songwriters. James P. Johnson wrote an exceptionally familiar tune you will hear in this medley from the show Runnin' Wild, 1924 Broadway. There's also another tune called Old Fashioned Love, which a few of you who have dabbled over the years may know. This is an exceptional score, and it's an arrangement by, as I recall, Robert Russell Bennett. Robert Russell Bennett, now mind you, he's not making the piano arrangement. It's his ideas on how to string the tunes together. What sorts of segues, the various interludes between numbers, keys. Anyway, I'm using it as a template, and Bennett was one of the very, very top orchestrators on Broadway for a number of shows, whether it's Gershwin or whether it's James P. Johnson. He was highly sought after, had his own orchestra as well on 78s and LPs later. And Runnin' Wild, here we go. All right, let me set it up for prevention of catastrophe later. All right, here we go. Look at that. Look at that. I'm really good. I'm really good. Oh, I mean, I gotta sit down again? You want the Zoom session to go late again? All right, so I'm gonna leave it up to you two who host me, whether or not I do another one of my Gustav Mahlers or we get straight to Zoom.
Encore.
Encore. Oh my gosh. I knew they'd say that. All right. I haven't played this here in about a year, probably when we started these stream concerts. Let me finish up. There's no such thing as an encore after this. You may actually leave the room in the middle of it if it goes on too long. Harry Warren. Now, if my friend, my long-term friend in North Carolina, David Jenkins, is listening, he is in the known galaxy, the very most knowledgeable and dedicated to the fine memory of Harry Warren, who was primarily Warner Brothers and then 20th Century Fox, really great songwriters of the 1930s and 40s. And I picked, or several years already, I picked out some of my fave tunes of his, and whether it's Gold Diggers type stuff or 42nd Street, you name it, you will actually know a few tunes in here, and I enjoy playing this too. There will be no fingers left after this medley. Thank you.
Thank you.